And the other thing that really struck me as you see these faces of desolation is that doctors who are already overburdened can't go out of the hospital and talk to these families. But somebody has to talk to these families. That man threw himself on the ground because his wife, I met him as his wife died, and he just threw himself on the ground. And I promise you, there was nobody at this hospital but a couple of journalists, not even a couple. At the time that I was there, I was the only one there. Uh, there's nobody to talk to these people. They're orphaned. They're orphans of the state, and they're lashing out in all directions that they can. Dr. Parkar, you've spoken about the ivory tower commentators before. Uh, the state seems to have orphaned orphaned its citizens. It's almost Darwinian. It's like every man and woman for themselves.
Well, Barkha, I totally agree with what Dr. Mufazzal Lakdawala, my friend, has said. It is a nuclear bombing that has taken place all over our country. It's not just one state. There is no oxygen. The other day, I saw on some, I was surfing the TV channel. I don't have time for that too. And I saw a senior doctor. He must be, I think, much more senior to me. He was wearing a mask and he was talking about if there is no oxygen, what are we supposed to do? And he cried on television. Now, with this, what more does one want as an eye-opener? I would like to know that. Is it the doctor that who's supposed to, as Dr. Lakdawala said, that it is not our prerogative to find out why is the shortage, from where is the shortage, and how it could be rectified. We as doctors are supposed to treat the patient, I repeat again and again and again. It's not our prerogative, and I don't want even my colleagues to be pulled into this. But we have reached a stage we have to let people know in the corridors of power, for God's sake, it is time. We have lost time and we must have oxygen. We cannot do anything without an oxygen. A patient comes to the hospital because he feels short of breath and there is no oxygen. Otherwise, most of the patients are so afraid to come to the hospital in a COVID environment that they try to take treatment at home. Only when they domiciliate treatment at home, only when they become bad, they feel that they should rush to the hospital. I was reluctant to come to my own hospital, but I was pushed, and I realized that I must go because I had nearly, time had come when I knew that I was going to become unconscious. So me as a clinician, I realized that I must rush to the hospital, and that's exactly what I did. When my friends saw to it that the ambulance is sent, and I went to the hospital. Now, if you don't supply us oxygen, what is the treatment that we are supposed to give? We have patients in the hospital who are not getting remdesivir, who are not getting tocilizumab, so these are the basic requirement for patients who come to our hospital who are either in the COVID ward or in the COVID ICU where they are moderately or very critically ill, that they go on the ventilator. We have to write prescriptions to them to bring it from outside. They run around the whole city. Some people call it from other cities, wherever they get even one ampule of that. I mean, come on, please, for God's sake, we all are tired. The other day I saw one of my colleagues, she was crying. I mean, everybody's got a family. I don't care where do you bring the oxygen from. Whether you want to bring it from Timbuktu is not my problem. It is high time that we have to say that we need oxygen. Whether you bring it in truckloads, whether you bring it by planes, armies, whatever you want to do. But for God's sake, in this country, supply the oxygen to even the remotest place. Forget about the cities. The cities somehow manage, but the peripheral cities, the satellite cities, the townships, they cannot manage. So they have to be enchained, sit down and do nothing and see the patient
But
dying.
Dr. Parkar, if
Is
I can
that what we
briefly
want?
ask you, yeah. I want to ask you though, I want to ask both you, Mufi, Trupti, and Ritesh, but I'll ask you briefly. When you hear a family break down and say, don't come to hospital, what does it make you feel as a doctor? Do you feel that you're in a thankless position, or do you understand the desolation of someone who's just lost a loved one, who's a poor person, who probably did not get that ventilator? Guess what? Because the hospital didn't have it.
See, the fear of coming to a hospital is so high that people feel afraid that once they reach the hospital, if they go on the ventilator, they die. And that's a fact too. A very minuscule percentage of the patients who have gone on invasive ventilator have survived because they go into multi-organ failure. All they have so many comorbidities that it's very difficult for us to retrieve them. I had just day before, yeah, for the last 5 days, a young gentleman who was 42 years old. He was not getting a bed. He came to our hospital. Fortunately, he was shifted into the ICU. He became better, but then all of a sudden he crashed. He went on the ventilator, had a myocardial, and he died. I mean, imagine a 42-year-old. He's got small children. Patients are begging, the relatives are begging that where do we get the medicine from? What answer can we give? Should I tell him that go to so and so place and buy it in black market? If he doesn't find it there, where does he go? Some
We've
people say,
reached that
"Oh, I'll
point,
get it
sir.
from
We have
Delhi.
reached that,
I'll get it from
sir.
some
Sir, let me
place
just
in
jump in
Lucknow,
there.
whatever." They are
Let,
so
let, let,
desperate. It is high time, and believe me, what Mufi Lakdawala said is a fact. It is a catastrophe. It is a nuclear bombing of our country. So, for God's sake, please wake up, all of y'all.